right, everybody. So today on the podcast, we have Marie Raea, Bostin Loyd's mother. How are you, Marie?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Just finished a workout.
All right, me too, actually. So,
What?
your friend essentially reached out to me, and I know obviously a lot happened with Boston. Now we'll get into his whole story there. And I think most people listening have heard of Boston, and he was really popular for years on the bodybuilding forums and the bodybuilding space and all of that. And then obviously there was his tragic, way too early death just a couple of years ago. So we're going to get into that as well, but. I think probably most people are not as familiar with you. I think people had heard that Boston's parents were both bodybuilders. So maybe go into a little bit of your background there.
Sure. I started competing when I was 21 years old, and I was the top natural bodybuilder. I won the Miss Universe when I was 40 years old. I competed probably from 21 to about 28 until the drug scene came in. And then I came back into the scene and started doing the ABA shows and doing the natural shows. And then I decided to compete again when I was 60, and I won the over 60 nationals. I won the Florida State, and I won a few others. So I've been in about over 100 shows.
Wow.
A lot of people don't realize that Boston used to guest pose when he was 5, 6, and 7 and raise money with kids with cancer. We
Oh,
used to go
wow.
to different states. So he started his celebrityness when he was young. He was on TV a lot, and he did well when he was.
And his father also a competitor,
His
right?
father was a competitor. He won his weight class in the California. He's a big guy like Boston, about 6'2", 260, 270.
Wow. Yeah, I would hear some people online like at see Boston have debates, and some people said I maybe one or two people I saw say he doesn't have good genetics. And I'm like, dude, like, look at his parents. But I didn't know who you were, but I saw pictures of you guys. I was like, there's no way this guy, maybe he doesn't have the genetics to be like Mr. Olympia, but he
No, no,
clearly has good genetics.
he clearly did. He screwed himself with too many drugs.
Yeah.
He would have stayed off the drugs because he was like, as a child, if you saw the pictures, I could send you pictures of when he was 5 years old and 6 years old, he was real muscular, and
Mm.
he excelled in every sport he did.
Do you know
So,
how early he got into the PED use?
yeah, 16. What
Wow.
happened was he started getting big his senior year. I think it was maybe 16 or 17, his senior year. He started getting kind of big and bloated, and I guess he bought some stuff online. And I didn't know that they were steroids or anything. He just said he got them online. But definitely he went his senior year. He was like 230 pounds wrestling.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Yeah. And then he did get steroids. I guess he bought some steroids from somebody in Chatsworth Powerhouse. And I ripped through his room because he started looking like he was getting bigger.
Hmm.
And plus he messed up both toilets by sticking syringes in there. And
Oh.
so I had to get both toilets fixed, the one upstairs and downstairs. And when the guy took them out, he says, "Come here, look at this." And I saw syringes in there.
Oh, wow.
And I look, oh my God, this kid's taking steroids. So I ripped up the room and found them. I called the father up and I said, because we were divorced 13 years by then. And he said, well, I'll take them. So he took the steroids. I said, fine.
Okay.
And then, of course, I went to Powerhouse and tried to find out who sold it to him and get in trouble and went to the police. Well, the father gave him back to him.
Oh my gosh. Really?
So then his father gave him back to him when he was 18.
Hmm.
And he was having problems with it for a while. And I contacted the Dr. Phil show, and we were supposed to go on the Dr. Phil show. In fact, could I read you a little thing from what I wrote to them?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, Rachel, my name is Marie Cunningham at the time. My son is Boston. He's a steroid user. He won the California team bodybuilding show and many others, but now his health is in danger along with his mental state. He said to me he needs help. This was a good sign. He is depressed from all the drug use, and he doesn't know what to do. Please, if there's any way that you can help us, I know my son is ready to listen, and Dr. Phil's helped so many young kids. I'm hoping that some way you can save my son because he is going to die if I don't get him help. Last week was the worst week. He became physical towards me. He had roid rage. My son is 260 pounds of muscle. Sometimes I am afraid of him. He is only 19 years old. Before all the drug use, he was a good kid, honor roll student, football player, baseball, wrestling team. Please take a look at my story. Now, this is August 23rd of 2011. Okay. Then I had to rewrite him. We were going to go on the show, but the father refused. So when he refused, they backed down. But it was going to be me, the dad, and him. But since the dad refused, so then I wrote him again. A mother's cry for help. I need your help. My son is now on his way to die. There is nothing I can do. I cry every night. He is on many steroids I don't even know. My son is on growth hormone, insulin, thyroid, Deco, Winstrol. He injects 2 times a day. I cry inside every time I see him do this. He sells to his friends, tells them how great they are. Bostin is the person that people listen to. He thinks there is nothing wrong with steroids. I was a natural bodybuilder for 20 years, but his father did drugs. His dad and I owned and ran Gold's Gym in Northridge, California. His dad and I have been divorced for 13 years. Bostin lives with me. He has always been around the gym. Rachel, please take another look at my story. It would be an eye-opener on the life of a teenage bodybuilder, how they think, eat, work out, take drugs. Please help my son. Now, this is October 28th of 2011.
And he passed when? How old was he when he passed? 29?
29. This he just passed. So to February 25th of 2022. Yeah, just 22. So here I knew there were problems.
Yeah.
And 6 weeks prior his death, I called the father up and I said, you need to get out here. We need intervention now. I said, he is going to die. And kind of laughed at me. But this is when one parent, is in this bodybuilding scene and doing the drugs, seeing it's nothing wrong. Now, I had taken him to the doctor many times. I took him to, when he was 19, to a regular doctor, and he said that he was starting kidney failure at the age of 19. And I could
it was even back then.
He was 19.
Wow.
He was having some problems with his kidneys. And I went to the doctor. I said, can you help me? And he says, well, I told the father, and he didn't seem like it was any big deal. So for some reason, his kidneys got better. I guess he went off some of the drugs, but he's still on them. And then recently I moved here to Florida to be with him 6 years ago. And I knew there was a problem. And I said, I'm paying for your insurance. Let's go to the doctor. We'd go to the doctor, and the doctor would say, okay, you got to get off. If you get off everything right now, you probably won't need dialysis. But he was hooked.
Yeah.
It's not just physical. I mean, it's mental. It's just like cocaine. They can't get off of it. And near the end, I knew something was up. Like, do you remember Phil Hearn? Because Phil Hearn died.
Right.
Now, they were talking in the gym one day, and Phil Hearn looked horrible. He looked like he had one foot in the grave. And him and Bostin are talking, and they're saying, oh, yeah, I'm not going to listen to the doctor. I'm still going to take the drugs. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Now, the drugs, the doctors don't look so good themselves, so they're not listening to them because they still look good.
Yeah,
I mean, Phil Hearn didn't, to me, look good. So it was like Dumb and Dumber talking about, okay, I'm not going to, listen to the doctor. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, having been around plenty of bodybuilding forums and enhanced people, it certainly seems like there is a level of denial or just not wanting to know. I mean, I understand that Bostin did get blood work towards the end, but I think a lot of it, he did not want to get tested. And I didn't know Bostin, so I'm not in any way trying to say like I was a friend of his. I have friends who, were good acquaintances of his, but otherwise, but I guess one thing that is interesting that stands up to me is you said that at one point he said, I need help. Like he kind of recognized the problem, but then later it seemed to act like it was no big deal. Like the way I kind of came across Bostin was that, it was like Team 3CC and he was really kind of promoting and doing very high doses.
Right. He was doing, now this is in 2011. So you're talking at 19.
Right.
Now, I was probably Ariel is his fiance. They spent a lot of time, but I raised Bostin. The father left when he was about 5 or 6. That child came out of me. He was part of me, and I knew him inside out. he was hurting. You know, he couldn't compete anymore. That day he died. He knows better than this. He didn't take blood pressure medicine. He had a big pizza. He was still taking steroids because it was coming to my house. So I knew he was taking stuff.
Mm,
Of course, I asked him about it. He says, "Oh, I'm just testing this stuff for other people." No, he was taking them.
yeah.
You know, I mean, and then along with Oxy, because see, another thing about bodybuilders that people don't know, they do for their appetite, the cocaine, like the father, you know, he did the cocaine, the steroids and the cocaine, so you don't have an appetite, and then you diet.
Right.
So how bad is that on the heart? Along with eating diuretics. I mean, no one.
Narcotics for pain, right? A lot of them are in more chronic
Right.
pain.
Boston had oxy. Boston, he had oxyephedrine. So he went to go work out after eating a lousy meal and taken oxy and ephedra.
Hmm.
It's pretty bad. Along with not taking blood pressure medicine.
Do you know why he wasn't taking any blood pressure medication or other just
Because
traditional
he said he
medicine?
forgot it that day, or he ran
Hmm.
out. He ran out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Somebody that intelligent. Now, my son was very intelligent because when I would go with him to the doctors, they wanted to know if he was a doctor. He
Hmm.
was able to speak on their level and terminology. That as a child, even a lot of the teachers said that he was a genius. So, I mean, for no college education, this kid could speak.
Yeah. Did it sounds like there was some obviously issues and you're at least somewhat estranged with the father, but after Boston passed, I mean, did the father show any sort of
Oh no,
remorse or regret over it?
not over that. The father loved Boston. I mean, he cried his eyes out and he was bawling. But the father is extremely religious. But I do believe that God gives us the power and the strength to do something, not just to pray, to sit there and pray. That we have to do something with that. And it seems like he never. When I asked him for the intervention, he didn't. He just laughed. I
Hmm.
don't know. I don't know if he feels anything now or regret. He just said,
Yes.
well, I was going to have the intervention on his birthday. Well, his birthday was March 29th, and he died February 25th. And I said,
Right.
now, intervention, because we had to have the same intervention with the father and his parents. And his parents came down like the Christian cavalry. And we all sat around and held hands and prayed for him. And because Boston's father had the same problem. And a lot of
Right.
people don't realize that. And then what we did was we had his parents come out. My father said, let's take him to Italy for 3 weeks and clean him out. We tried that. This is Boston's father. That didn't work. The only thing that worked was moving him from his friends. And his father got cleaned out. And then we owned the gym in Northridge and did well.
And no other siblings, right?
No, Boston was our only child.
Wow. So in terms of, I guess I was going to ask if it had escalated over the years, which I'm sure to some degree it did, but it sounds like even at such a young age, it was pretty extreme. I mean, to get to 260, even with good genetics, I mean, you have to be pushing things pretty heavily.
You know, the funny thing about that, I didn't even realize that till I read the emails. I mean, what luck that I kept. One day I opened this and I said, oh my God, I have emails from 2011.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's almost like he was telling me to look at these emails, Mom, tell my story. I mean, that's how I felt it. I mean, where did these emails come from?
Was that coming? I know you guys were in California where there's a much bigger bodybuilding scene. I grew up in New Jersey. I mean, there's some bodybuilding scene there, but back then, I mean, I'm about Boston's age. So I'm now 31. So we were in high school around a similar time. And looking back, there was probably a couple of people on some stuff, but nobody was in the realm of 260. Nobody was clearly enhanced. It wasn't really until I got to college that I even saw that. So where you guys were, was that pretty common for high schoolers?
Okay, now remember, we're from Porter Ranch, and that's real close to Venice Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 23-minute drive to Venice Beach on a good day without traffic. So you're talking, this is the Mecca.
Right.
And I used to do the Venice Beach shows, and I also used to judge for 6 years at the Venice Beach shows. And that's where, you know, the big bodybuilders are at Venice Beach. So
Right.
all the gyms, and especially the ones that we owned, I mean, Corey Everson worked there, out there, Albert Beckles, Victor Richards. I mean, I even trained Chuck Norris was one of my clients.
Oh, really?
Hogan was there, and I trained his wife. It was a big celebrity, big bodybuilding gym,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
and it was a lot of fun. But that's what he grew up with, a lot of celebrities and bodybuilders.
Right. So, I mean, ultimately, you think it was like a lot of the pressure because I feel like nowadays that pressure has almost extended much more because of social media, where, maybe before it was just if you were in one of these meccas, but now it's kind of all over the place, right? And I do hear more and more about high schoolers jumping on stuff because of that pressure.
Right. And I believe it was even still back then, 2011, because now I'm reading this. If his kid friends, you see, we had this big house up in the hills with a tennis court, which was a basketball court. All his friends would migrate to our house. Now I'm realizing these kids were probably doing drugs like he was,
Yeah.
because they're all rich kids that could buy it.
Hmm.
So now it made me think, were they on it too?
Right, right.
I swear it wasn't until I reread these messages I wrote, because I
Now,
didn't realize he was that much.
my understanding was so and he had was it a daughter he left behind?
He has a son.
A son. Okay.
Yeah,
With Ariana,
Ariella.
right?
Ariella. Yeah, Ariella.
Ariella. Okay. Do they live near you?
Yeah, right across the golf course. If they let their dogs out, they'd come running in my house.
Okay. So you are at least still involved with the your grandson.
Yeah, I was involved more back then when my son was alive, and the last not up until about, I'd say about 2 months. He's in school now.
Okay. I would
And
imagine that there's probably a part of you that maybe sees Boston in him, right? I don't know if that's harder or like a
he's
beautiful
really
thing, but
sweet. He's real. Boston was a pain in the ass as a child. I mean, that song "Bad to the Bone" that was made for
sure.
him.
Yeah.
He was a handful. I mean, he got kicked out of schools, and the thing was, he was bright. He was like a straight A student. This kid was bright, but he tried to tell the teachers what to do.
Hmm.
He was on a first name basis. Every teacher knew him. Every guidance counselor knew Boston by name. I mean, at a
Okay.
young age, it seemed like he was a celebrity in school because um, he just didn't take any guff from anybody. But the teacher seemed to like him.
Yeah. Do you think towards the end there he realized that was a problem, or was he still in denial about it?
Oh, he knew there was a problem. He's smart enough to know. I think he was. My son is a very sensitive person. Actually, he on the outside, but he loves animals. He loves people. He loves kids. He has a big heart, and I think it was killing him inside. He was showing the exterior.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think.
just from some of the videos, I saw some videos where he seemed to kind of accept it and go for help. I saw other videos where he acted like you said, like the doctors didn't know what they were talking about. It wasn't a big deal. Unfortunately, I remember a post and it was John Meadows and him kind of arguing, and basically because of his extreme drug use, because of Boston's extreme drug use, John had said, I don't think you're going to live to be this age. And like I said, unfortunately, now both of them have since passed. And
I know.
then
I saw that. Yeah, John Meadows and.
John passed. Yep. And John, I mean, his YouTube channel still goes. I'm not sure who keeps it going, but I'm glad to see that they're keeping, he was really beloved by everybody in the industry. And there's so many, like you said, Phil Hearn, and the last few years, Dallas McCarver, Rich Piana.
Now, Rich Piana, we were actually friends with. He used to
Yeah.
train at the gym in Northridge. He knew Boston when Boston was in the daycare in diapers.
I remember them doing some videos. I remember I don't know the
They
details. There
got
was
into a
some video
fight.
where they had a little bit of a fight or something. I don't know if that was
Yeah,
reconciled, but
because he said that he wasn't saying everything that he was taking, and he was lying about it. Because Boston's pretty much tells everybody what he takes.
mm. Oh, is that what it was about? Okay.
Yeah, and he was saying he was lying about stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they were really good friends. He was really nice. I've talked to the mother. The mother's a sweetheart. That was
Rich's
really,
mother.
yeah, Rich's mother's very nice.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't even 50, right? He was in his 40s at the
Oh, he's
time.
in his 40s, yeah.
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 Yeah. So, I mean, I don't, it
You
seems
know,
like, go ahead.
Boston and Rich have something in common. They were both successful because a lot of these bodybuilders don't have a pot to piss in.
Hmm.
These two had money,
Yeah.
were successful.
Well, and that's I think one of the tough things is, if you love, let's say, soccer, and you put your whole life into it and it doesn't work out, it's like, well, it sucks that it didn't work out, but you can still do it casually and it's fine. If you put your whole life into professional enhanced bodybuilding, even if you make a lot of money, obviously it can turn out very poorly. And the reality is most people, as you said, don't make much money. I mean, I know some people who look amazing who are, doing like DoorDash because all their money is just going towards drugs, and that's just what they do. And nobody's ever going to hear their name. And it's sad because I think they probably are addicted to it. That's their identity and they can't give it up.
Yeah, it's their identity. And remember, when you are built like Boston, people look at you and you look like Hercules. How many people want to look like Hercules? They're not going to listen to the doctors that are telling you your insides are dying, even though you look out good outside. This is the worst drug to me. It's the drug of the century because you look great outside and you're dying inside.
Right.
The sport should be called drug warfare.
Yeah.
That should be the new name for it, because it's not bodybuilding or who's the better genetics, because a lot of times some people who are genetically gifted don't do as well on the drugs.
Right.
So it's
right. Their genetic response to it in a sense too.
It's a chemical warfare. So how is this a sport?
Yeah.
And they're dying. I mean, diuretics. I mean, I remember competing just 2 years ago, and I'm backstage, and this girl said, "Well, I can't drink any water. My coach told me not to." I go, "All the judging's over with." She goes, "Yeah, but he told me I can't drink until everything's over with." I said, "So you haven't had water all day?" She said, "Yeah, no water all day." She passed out. She passed out. And and that coach Shelby. I mean,
Shelby
4
Starnes.
people died. And even Boston on one of his casts was saying, "Yeah, this guy Shelby's going to kill people." And there he is killing people.
Yeah, the Shelby Starnes thing, that was now maybe 2 years ago. I actually I don't know if you know Dr. Thomas O'Connor. He was known as the anabolic doc, and now he's kind of made a new name as the metabolic doc. But he and one of Shelby's former clients were on the podcast about, I guess it was 1 to 2 years ago now. Just saying, some of the extreme protocols. And again, I don't know Shelby. I've known of Shelby since probably 2009. I know he works with almost exclusively female clients at this point. But I know that was a whole big fiasco 1 to 2 years ago as well.
Well, it's funny about these trainers. I saw this girl in the gym, and she looked a little puffy and big. And I asked her, I said, what do you take? And she goes, "Well, I'm going to compete. And my coach wants me to take thyroid T4. He wants me to take Anavar and Primobolan or something."
Mm-hmm.
I looked at her and I said, "What?" I said, "Do you realize if you took thyroid, you're messed up for the rest of your life?" And she goes, "Well, the Anavar," he said, "it won't hurt me." And I go, "Well, how much is he?" 20 mgs. 20 mgs and then Primobolan too? I go, "No." I said, "You're crazy." I said, "You're a mom?" She said, "Well, yeah." You better think of your kids.
Yeah, I know another woman who is a mom of 3, I think, and she had this pretty crazy transformation, really impressive in like a year. And then later, I was chatting with her about the transformation, and then she basically admitted that she had been taking quite a bit of stuff. And actually, that story could be said for probably 3 or 4 women I know. And I think oftentimes it starts with a justification because they have a coach who they trust and they say, "Oh, it's not a big deal." And both of these girls I'm thinking of right now have had to stop competing because of health issues. And, I'm not saying that, somebody doing a mild cycle is going to kill you. Obviously, with Boston's situation, it was a decade of pretty severe abuse. So I'm not trying to fearmonger, but
totally abuse.
It does oftentimes kind of start that cycle, right? Because then you want more and more. And like you said, when somebody looks at you as Hercules, I think just like from a human psychology standpoint, it's hard to back off from the best you ever were, whether that's financially, physically. And so you hit this peak that's unattainable without these drugs. It makes it much harder to stop, I think.
Well, and the funny part is that when you're doing drugs, you got to get off to get your normal receptors back to normal before you start another cycle. And so as long as you're on, you should be off. So all these people are staying on, and then they keep going on more and more, and they get more bloated looking. Their stomach is distended from growth hormone. They look horrible. Whatever
Yeah.
happened to the Frank Zanes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that nice look? I mean, look, they look like water buffaloes out there.
Well, I think a
What?
lot of people would agree with you. I mean, classic physique is really blowing up because of that, right? You know, a lot of people would rather look like Chris or Breon or something like that than some of like the top Mr. Olympia competitors.
Right. And then people make fun of them, calling them flamingos, you know?
um,
You know,
so do you think that if Boston, you know, was able to see this, I mean, do you think that even after everything that had happened, there would still be a proclivity towards or an obsession towards drugs more and more? Or do you think if like, you know, let's say he didn't pass, but he had a near death incident, like, do you think there was ever a chance that it was going to get better? Or do you think it was just kind of destined?
I believe he needed something major to happen. In fact, just 4 or 5 months before he passed, I went to another doctor and we went for a pec tear. And I wrote the doctor and I said, listen, I know you're athletic and you're a big guy. I said, can you talk to my son and speak on his language? Cuss if you have to, but speak on his language. It didn't work, but he didn't get the surgery. I was hoping he was going to get the surgery so he would have to get off the drugs.
Right.
That didn't work. But the answer to that is my son has come to me in my sleep saying, Mom, I fucked up. I fucked up royally. I'm sorry. I fucked up my son, my wife. I'm sorry. And he's come to me, and you know, you have a mother. There's telepathy there because she raised you. She's blood. So yes, I think if he would have had the near-death experience and was in the hospital, I think he would have came out different.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have the chance. It wasn't in the cards for him to come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will not let his death be in vain. Something has got to be done. And I think you seem like a real educated guy. I don't know you, but I've been watching your podcast. If something's not done, more people are going to die.
Yeah, I'd like to think that the last few years from Dallas McCarver to Boston to Rich Piana to John and all these other guys, I'd like to think that it is a force for good in the sense that people will learn from the lessons. I think, unfortunately, it's very hard to combat the strong pressure of social media that, like TikTok. I mean, you have people like even just 10 years ago, again, when I was like Boston and I were in high school, it was really impressive to have a 500-pound deadlift. Like you just didn't see that often. And
Right.
now, I mean, you have like some girls in high school doing that. I mean, it's just crazy,
Some of these girls.
you know, and like what's on TikTok to be impressive these days. So unfortunately, I do think with the continued ever presence of social media, that is hard, but hopefully people can take these big examples and learn from them.
So what I think needs to be done is Congress. Those are steps that have to be laws changed with the bodybuilding contest, the IFBB, the NPC, PCA, or all that stuff have to be drug tested. It would have been nice if bodybuilding could have been in the Olympics. Then for sure, it would have changed. So the only way to me that this is going to change is that, and I plan to go to Congress and try to get some laws changed. I mean, I may be sticking my neck out, but you know what? He's telling me that he screwed up.
Well, I can't imagine, you know, what it would be like to lose a child. So I'm really sorry for your loss. You know,
The only thing that's keeping me going is he's inside me saying, "Don't let this happen to anyone else." And in a lot of his videos, he was even saying that, "Don't do as I do."
Mm-hmm.
And he was even saying how bad a lot of these coaches are doing. He admitted that coaches like Shelby should not be coaching.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I forgot that he was one of the people who called him out ahead of time.
Remember, he was calling people out what they were doing. But yet, you know, he was doing it himself because he admitted he was addicted. He needed help for addiction.
Sure. Yeah.
And they don't have, you know, steroids as an addiction. It's the worst addiction. You look great. You're dying inside.
So, you know, I'll probably try to find maybe some Boston videos to link below for people who are less familiar with him and just, you know, some of the stuff that he had put out there that was good. Do you have anything else that you want to share before we sign off, Marie?
Just that Boston was a good guy. I mean, he started charity work at a young age. He was in the bodybuilding world. Drugs destroyed him. The steroid, the bodybuilding, the scene of getting big. I mean, on his arm, get big or die trying.
Yeah.
That not say it all. That's how I could leave it.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I'm out here doing this because I really don't want another mother to have to go through this, another family to go through this, because it's going to happen more and more if more people don't step up to the plate and say you don't need to do drugs. This would be a better sport if it's cleaned out.
Sure. Well,
But
thank you
until
again,
that,
Marie. And again, I'm sorry for your loss.
thank you for having me on. I appreciate this. Even though I look lousy, I just finished working.
No. All right.
But
Take care.
I do. Thank you very much.